It's done. Donald is in, the dollar is up, and if some of the videos on social media and even some of the headlines are anything to go by, our economic landscape is about to burst into flames. So can we just bring back some pragmatism into the conversation? And for that, I'm joined by ETM Analytics Director, George Glynos. George, we saw a strong rally in the markets following the outcome of the US elections due to some of the so-called Trump trades. We saw the dollar strengthening quite a bit. Is this markets just kind of rejigging themselves now that the election uncertainty is out of the way? Or do you think this positive swing, this momentum, especially given the economic backdrop in the US currently, that it's got some legs to run?
It's a really interesting question, and my answer might surprise people, but I don't think there's anything substantial to take out of the market reactions that we saw following the announcement. I suspect that there's some algorithmic trades that are testing limits to see if there are any stops that could be triggered. I think that it was something a lot more technical in the background than it had anything to do with fundamental assessments of how trade is going to be under Trump and what the ultimate impact is going to be, for one simple reason, is that there are so many cross currents to Trump coming into power. I'm not sure that we can fully understand what the ultimate impact is going to be and which current is going to be stronger than all the others. So there's a lot going on. And I can give you a couple of examples, but for example, everyone's fretting over the tariff situation and how he's going to impose tariffs and on who he's going to impose those tariffs on, and what the percentage is going to be, and on what goods is it going to be. Well, like if you have a look at the first round of Trump's tenure, his first set of 4 years, he didn't really have that much impact on the trade account, and then so immediately you start to ask yourself questions as to why. He imposed tariffs, he threatened trade wars and all sorts of things. Why didn't it have much of an impact? And when you go into the nuts and bolts, what you begin to realize is that a lot of what drives a trade balance actually has more to do with the domestic consumptive cycle. In other words, credit demand and supply, and how that drives demand for imports and exports, as well as investment into the country from abroad. Now, up until now, the US has been running fairly significant trade deficits. But if you have a look at how those are funded, you'll find that the capital that has been flooding into the country as in the way of fixed investment has, for example, more than offset some of the savings deficiencies, and so it nets off, and you see the effect come through in the dollar. It's not necessarily about tariffs. Tariffs tend to impact those dynamics at the margin. It's not the be all and end all of trade. So they're already, if you want to talk about a pragmatic assessment on how these things unfold, you need to look at the broader macro structure than just focusing too much on the tariffs, because I don't know that is going to generate either green for good or red for bad. So there's a lot of that going on. There's geopolitics, and whether or not Trump is going to be successful in ending wars. Already he's been congratulated by Putin, for example. So in other words, does he have a warmer relationship with Putin to be able to bring him around a negotiating table and to see whether or not there can be progress towards some sort of a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia? These things matter because it impacts things like the risk assessments in the markets and risk appetite, more broadly speaking. That can impact especially riskier markets like the Rand and other emerging markets. So there are many crosswinds that are blowing right now, and it's really tough to be able to decide exactly which one to focus too much on. Interestingly, I think that was the point being made by Fed Chairman Powell last night when when they decided to reduce interest rates. I suspect that they did so because they also don't quite know exactly what to focus on, and they don't know what's coming down the pipeline. So for now, they're going to act. as though they were as if nothing has really changed, and they will play it as it lies.
Yeah, it is difficult to call right now. Like you said, there's so many shifts happening externally. Whether you look at the Middle East, which I think is still going to be one of the biggest risk factors going forward, and which could determine a lot around what's happening even in the US. We have the trade war. We have Europe really facing economic struggles. And then, like you said, the US also has domestic issues. I mean, the fiscal issues, the debt issue specifically is concerning. And there was a bit of a lack of that being addressed during the campaign. So we don't know exactly how Trump will look at that. We don't even know who's going to be at the helm of all these positions. So there's still a lot of uncertainty. So a lot of data that we will have to wait for, policy decisions, cabinet decisions, before I think we will have really clear direction, a more clearer direction of where it's heading. But obviously the domestic question for South Africa, and it's been a discussion point for a couple of months now, is what could happen to AGOA, because we found ourselves walking in this very straight and narrow line where we can't really afford to make enemies on either side, but we are very closely linked to BRICS plus countries. And you spoke about the tariffs, and I think it's so important to remember that Trump uses these tariffs to get something from it. In other words, he looks at China and he thinks, China is undercutting domestic manufacturing, so we will hit China with more tariffs. Unless there's something in the bag to be gained for Trump, he's not just going to come out and swing. That's just my personal assessment. So I know the AGOA agreement has been under review. There has been calls for it because of the ICJ case specifically that South Africa brought, or linked to it, at least some partially. But I don't think he's just going to come in and swing the axe on us. It still could happen. I could be wrong. It's still Trump. We don't know. But, just from your perspective, how do you think he will this time around at least handle South Africa, and obviously, by extension, the implications for the rand, if we could look into the future?
Look, let me first start off by saying he's got so much that he has to tackle. He's got so much on his agenda that I think South Africa ranks quite far down his priority list right now. So up front, I don't think AGOA is going to be much of a priority in his life. He's going to have to deal with China. He's got wars. He's got domestic tax breaks. He wants his illegal immigration stopped. There's just so much that he is going to be tackling up front, that AGOA and little old South Africa on the tip of the continent is just not going to feature prominently. That being said, I don't think he will enjoy the relationship that South Africa has fostered with either Russia or Israel, for that matter. That being said, it is kind of almost humorous.
Russia really. And Iran? Sorry.
Russia.
You mentioned Israel.
Yes, Israel, because South Africa went and took them to court. Russia, because, they're part of BRICS Plus. Iran now is as well. Iran is funding Hezbollah in Israel. It's a complicated mess, to be quite frank. And I think Trump has got, like I said, far bigger issues to fry than South Africa. But on that point, South Africa has kind of pinned its flag to the BRICS mast. That's what it's going to do. It's not going to backtrack on that. If anything, it has doubled down on that bet. And, strategically speaking, if one has a look at BRICS Plus and its percent contribution to overall global GDP versus what you're seeing out of the G7, BRICS Plus overtakes G7 in around 2026, 27. So if you're going to pin your flag to a mast, pin it to the one that's growing more rapidly, and that would be BRICS Plus. AGOA, is it something to fear? Well, the percentages really, insofar as South Africa's trade are concerned, quite small. And you may find that there will be mitigating factors in terms of South Africa's overall impact on trade if we can offset that with some sort of a bigger trade deal within BRICS Plus. So I don't think it's something to fear. I think South Africa at this stage of the game is pretty much all in on the BRICS Plus trade, and so I don't foresee there being a calamitous outcome of that. But, have we alienated ourselves from, the Western powers? I would say to some degree we have, and there will be consequences to that. Exactly what they're going to be at this point, I think it's too soon to tell, and I don't think we're going to find out for at least a year or two, until such time as he's dealt with the big issues in his life. Then eventually he might turn across to Africa. But, from his previous tenure, we kind of know what he thinks of the continent already, and it's not particularly
No.
good. So,
it's not endearing. No.
it's not endearing at all. So we're not going to be holding our breath for a particularly wonderful outcome insofar as that's concerned. But again, South Africa is marching to its own drumbeat. It's turned its focus elsewhere, and I think we need to accept that.
So I suppose only time will tell, but in the meantime, at least we have some colorful press conferences again to look forward to over his term, only Trump can do them. But George, thank you very much, and we will chat again soon.